Very good afternoon, everybody. This is the last session of this second season of our presentations. Today, semester two students are making their final presentation on the background reading or the setting of 20th century literature. In this session, we have presentations by these students. Let me share their topics here. Okay. Yes, so we have the presentations by Bhavna on Siegfried Sassoon as war poet, Dhvani on medieval, Mughal, and modern art movements of India, Divya Sheta on comedy of Menace in The Room by Harold Pinter, Himanshi on discussion on why do nations prefer war instead of peace. Okay. Hirva will make presentation on fantasy literature, Jheel on Victorianism versus modernism, Mayuri on surrealism as a movement, art movement. Okay. Nidhi on theater of the absurd, Nirav 20th century major artistic and literary movements, and Vachchalata will make on fantasy and religion in 20th century literature. Okay. You all have submitted your presentations in Google Classroom, wherein it will be evaluated through a rubric which we have prepared to judge your content from content to your presentation confidence, and then the citations for the research or academic writing. Okay, so let us start with the first presentation by Bhavna. Yes, now you can start your presentation. You have to speed up your things. Then very long presentation, then make it short. Otherwise, you won't be able to complete in time. So 7 to 8 minutes. After 7 to 8 minutes, I will give a reminder to conclude your presentation. So once I give you a reminder, within 2 minutes, you have to conclude or wind up quickly your slides. Remaining slides, go through the slides, but very quickly move on to conclude.
Hello, I am Bhavna Sosa. Today is my presentation topic, Siegfried Sassoon as a war poet. This is my personal introduction. Sassoon, he was born in September 1886. He was English poet and novelist, known for his anti-war poetry and for his fictionalized autobiographies, praised for their evocation of English country life. Sassoon enlisted in World War First and was twice wounded seriously while serving as an officer in France. This picture of his information. Education of Sassoon. He was educated at the New Bacon Preparatory School, Kent, Marlborough College in Wiltshire, and at Clare College, Cambridge. He studied both law and history from 1905 to 1907. In his notable work, firstly, prose, the three volumes that described the experiences of fictional Sherstone from boyhood up to the armistice of 1918. First, memoirs of fox hunting men, memoirs of an infantry officer, Sherstone Progress, now reissued in one volume as the complete memoirs at George Sherstone. These books are a remarkable exercise in the autobiographical mode. His poems, "The Daffodils," "A Murderer," "The Hero," "Glory of Women," "The General Counter Attack," and "Suicide in the Transit." The memoirs of a fox hunting man. The memoirs of a fox hunting man carries the epigraph, "This a happy breed of men, this little word." It does indeed confine itself for three quarters of its length within the narrow limits of the literary territories staked out by Robert Smith Surtees. In Memoirs of an Infantry Officer, Sherstone struggles to achieve recognition among the soldiers as he once did among fox hunters 6 years before Wright's sessions. I had been ambitious of winning races because that had seemed a significant way of demonstrating my equality with contemporaries and I wanted to make the World War serve a similar purpose for its only I could get a military cross and I should feel comparatively safe and confident. The publication of Siegfried's journey in 1945 cast a new retrospective light on the trilogy, especially the last part of it. For in this book writing in his on person covers again the ground from 1916 to 1918. This time he writes as a poet and discusses the composition to his poems, the reaction to their publication, the hardening of his resolves to make his protest. The war service in Sessions. Motivated by patriotism, Sesson joined the military just as the threat of World War First was realized and was in service with the Sussex Yeomanry on the day the United Kingdom declared war. He broke his badly in a riding accident and was put out of action before even leaving England, spending the spring of 1915 convalescing. At around this time, his younger brother Homo was killed at Gallipoli. Homo's death hit Siegfried is very hard. The Sessions period of duty on the Western Front were marked by exceptionally brave actions, including the single-handed capture of German trains in the Hindenburg line. He decided in 1917 to make a stand against the conduct of the war. Then, this is my citation and
Questions from Vachchalata. Okay.
Bhavna, what types of poems he wrote and which is considered as his famous poem?
Siegfried Sassoon's many poems famous and is the hero is a war poem.
Bhavna, my question to you is that could you please throw some light on the epigraph used in the poem, this happy breed of men, this little world? So it seems that it is very simple lines, but why these particular lines are picked up in this poem? Can you please throw some light on that?
So, I don't know. Is it? Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Dhvani Rajyaguru, and my topic is Indian art movements in today's presentation. जहाँ डाल डाल पर सोने की चिड़िया करती है बसेरा, वह भारत देश है मेरा. We have studied trends and movements of Western countries, but now I'm going to discuss Indian medieval, Mughal, and modern art movements of India. These are my personal information. So first, I will start with art of medieval India, and in that I will focus on the sculptures. So, according to Anand K. Kumaraswamy, the medieval period in India is mainly one of the crystallization of existent type. There were two types: the Pala, which means Pala school is from the 8th to 12th century, and that was the sculpture of Bengal and Orissa. So it was about the North school, and then the another group is Kola, that means the Southern India schools. Medieval art was commissioned and patronized as paintings, either on the grand scale of the walls, or as murals, or as miniatures. So metal sculptures or the with the use of bronze or copper were also used in that. And one of the main contributions was the grand temples built, which were amalgamation of all art forms practiced during this time. So first, the first group, the North sculptures, and in which the Khajuraho temple, Bhubaneswar temple, Karnang temple were very famous in that time, and even also today also. And these sculptures are from the 13th century. In the first right picture, we can see the Muktashwar temple, Bhubaneswar. So this is the sculpture from the Bhubaneswar temple, Odisha temple, and the another is from the Karnak Sun temple. During this time, southern religion and southern temples were also famous, and especially the Thanjavur, Gangoi Konda, Cholapuram. During the 10th century, these sculptures are made in that cities, and even all the south states also, but these were many famous, and they are the great effigies. And what was special in the south sculptures is uh, uh, their form, their slender, their modeling, and these were very famous. The pure contour of their arms and legs make them works of completely classical perfection. And lastly, there were another style of South was Hoysala style. That means the certain heaviness, decorative overload, and iconography rigor. This was the specific things of the characterization of Hoysala style, and these are the sculpture of Hoysala style. Now, Mughal era art, the second art movement I have taken is Mughal era art. It is it is spread during the Mughal time, the 16th century to 19th century, and they have taken the ideas, they have taken the miniature painting idea from the Hindu, Buddhist, Jain influence, but especially from the Persian miniature paintings. This era, the paintings of this era are divided in the five Mughal times. The first is Humayun, Akbar, Jahangir, Shah Jahan, and then Aurangzeb period. Now, the Mughal paintings, the first very famous painting is the Tuti Name, that means the Tales of the Parrot. It was the story, the Tales of the Parrot, and in which they have put paintings as the album, they preserved in the album in that. Then the first was the Humayun painting time, and in which he was the prior Mughal era painter, rural, that has taken the two painters from the Persia, that means Persian artist, and these are Mir Sayyid Ali and then Khwaja Abd al Samad, to join him in India. So the first picture, the first painting we see is done by the Mir Sayyid Ali, in which the Majnun being is brought by the beggar in the painting, and the another one is done by the Baswan. Baswan is from the Akbar period. Under the reign of Akbar the Great, the Mughal painting came into its own. This was the time when many paintings are done, and Baswan was first of all pioneer among them, and they have done painting by the squirrel's tail and the camel hair. And also in that time, in the painting they have used mineral and some vegetable dyes. Now the paintings of Jahangir, and then the end of the era, like the father Akbar, Jahangir also showed interest in painting, but after him, the Shah Jahan time, and especially in the Aurangzeb time, the paintings were not done as high as as done in the Akbar's time. And the end of the era was done when the uh, Shah Alam II was there, and that time they have copied masterpieces of the past, but they haven't made any new painting in that time. And this painting from the Jahangir's time, the Jahangir Nama, this painting. Another style was very famous in Mughal era, the Pahari style. The Pahari style was from the Himalayas foothills. It was between the 17th century and the 18th century, and it was declined after the 1800. This style consists of two schools, the Basohil school and the Kangra school. Basohil school flourished toward the end of the 17th century, and it is based on the its use of bold color, intense emotionality, style, facial types. So this is the painting of the Kangra school. Now, what is Kangra school paintings? The Kangra school have done paintings between the mid 18th century, and it is characterized by the curving lines, calmer colors, and delicate lyricism was the special things of the Kangra school paintings. Now I'm jumping to the modern art movement. In the modern art movement, Bengal school art movement was very famous. It was because it was start during the first notable art movement in the create an entirely different style known as the Bengal school art. It was started when the independent movement was already going on in 1896. It was started, and Abindranath Tagore was founder of this Bengal school art movement. Another artist of this movement are uh, Nandalal Bose, Gaganendra Tagore, Mukul De. So these are another painters, and this movement was centered around Kolkata and Shantiniketan. this Bharat Mata painting, the middle center painting, is done by Abhindranath Tagore. The aim of this movement was to spread the tradition of India towards the country. So they have made many Indian paintings, and this is the Shiva painting done by Nandlal Bose, and this is also the this painting of the girls going in the first cloud is done by Nandlal Bose. Then the Calcutta group of art and progressive artist group are also modern artist group, and this group is a radical group called as Calcutta group. It was because it was against the background of political, social, economical uphill with the war, famine, and violence. It was established in the 1943, and the founder members of this group were Pradosh Das Gupta, Kamala, his wife, painter Gopal Ghosh, Nirod Majmudar, Paritosh Sen, and Subha Tagore. They were the people of this group. And another movement is kind of a recent movement, not recent, but the modern movement that had not taken much of time, and that is progressive artist group movement. And MS Hussain is one famous person of the progressive artist group. Another is HS Raza, and they have also done the aesthetic paintings in this time. So these are some famous modern paintings of this groups: progressive artist group, Bengal group, and Kolkata group. These are my references. Thank you.
Which movement in this do you like the most?
Uh, I like modern movement the most because it is having so many aspects in the modern movement, the Indian tradition and culture. Then they are also painting on the aestheticism. The aesthetic paintings are there, and also anti nostalgia paintings are there. So I like the modern movement, art movement the most.
Dhvani, my question is, what is the reason behind? My question is, what do you think? What is the reason behind people not taking that much interest in art and bringing religion in between art?
Uh, are you talking about this time, right? Okay. So it's not like that people are not interested in painting or art specifically. People are there. People are taking interest, and even many people are drawing the aesthetic pictures in today's time also. Yeah, but why they are taking religion? Because I don't know the specific thing behind it, but many painters are painting the sculpture, or not the sculpture actually, but the god's picture and that things. So maybe they are trying to show the heritage of that ancient time. So that's why they are painting that those things. And even people are there who are actually very much interested in art.
Very good afternoon, friends. Myself, Divya Sheta. Today's my topic is the comedy of Menace in the Room, the play by Harold Pinter. This is my information. Uh, about the play. That first play, this was the play written by Harold Pinter. It was the first play written by him in 1957, set in a single small room, like the second one play, The Birthday Party, about a married man and woman whose name are Rose and Bert, living in one of the rooms of a large building. Rose, who is a diligent wife in taking care of her life partner all the time, feeding and reassuring him, but who remains silent throughout the whole scene. This silent is quite reliable in Venus. What is comedy of Menace? The phrase comedy of Menace as a standalone description inspires both positive and negative feelings. Comedy is used during a danger situation to cause audience to draw judgments about a particular character or communication. This phrase is part of the title of a British play written here, and what Irving Ward said that he who is critic in 1915s emphasized the phrase when writing a review of the plays of Harold Pinter. Ward used a comedy of Menace in a review of several of Pinter's works, although at the time he had seen only one, The Birthday Party. But in this play, we can also see the comedy of Menace is there. Comedy of Menace in the play. The themes in the room, such as menace, threat, and fear, are interconnected. In threat and fear, we can see in Rose's character. She wants to stay on that room. First of all, when the play start, we can see that Rose arguing with her husband that I don't know like this. I don't want to stay here in this room because there is something that darkness there. There is something that that I don't want stay in this room. So this threat and that fear that somewhere she felt again and again, then this fear and threat are interconnected. The central characters are scared. The central characters are Rose and Better are scared out of feeling threatened, and the author does not give details about the reason behind their scare, and that's why we cannot directly connect it, the this comment this menace concept or the identity of the ones threatening them. So the whole play is covered with mystery. The spectators think they are scared because of indefinite reason. The chief cause of menace in the room are unknown and uncertain. Whatever they felt, whatever Rose felt in this story, that it is as a reader, as a viewer, we can say that this is like unknown. There is no connection. Perhaps there is no connection or no certainty of what she felt. The characters are not only one left in the dark. It is said that in such place, not resolving or answering the question. These answering and questions, there is the episode between Rose and her husband, that whatever she questioning among him, he completely take his silent in the whole play. So what Ducour say that they live in a closed environment that looks like a womb because they are scared to get out of their small world, which is especially noticed in the character of Rose, who attempts to separate herself completely from the outside and to be isolated in her room. Thornley and Roberts noticed that the author in this play hypothesizes in the characters' incapability to communicate properly with other people as they feel uncomfortable in their apartment. The outside danger disturbed them. Rose, in fact, feels she is under menace by the basement men and Mr. and Mrs. Sands. Mr. and Mrs. Sands, who are the another couple that while Mr. Kidd, who are old Lord Land, who is old Lord Land, he listened Rose. He listened communication between Rose and her husband. That Rose arguing her husband that I don't want to stay here because this room like somewhere that it's haunting me, or this darkness or dark environment that I don't want to stay here. She described that room as bad, as a negative way that Mr. Kidd, who is the owner of that building, owner of that apartment, who listen Rose listen that communication, and so that Mr. and Mrs. Sands are come there, and they saw their room to stay there. However, even though the room is safe and secure and have no scene on unwanted isolation, there is a threat and menace waiting outside. So, this is also reflect Rose's psyche that while Mr. Kidd brings that couple to that he Mr. Kidd wants to not leave their Rose and her husband that in their room. So he wants to bring one couple that, and this why after she listened that these couple are now Mr. and Mrs. Stan are now stay now they are living they will live in this room. They perhaps they in somewhere she try to she not wants to give the room to that couple, and the menace atmosphere in the room is even represented by the bad weather exaggerated by the character. These are my word citation. Thank you.
Um, so, Divya, my question is, from which incident the fear emerges in the audience in this play? For example, in the birthday party, the drum is.
Yes, there is the last part of this play, the room, that one Mr. Relay. Mr. Relay is the another character who is the black skin man and who is beggar. That he come with here writer Harold Pinter is not completely said that it's not elaborate the idea that yes, Mr. Relay is come with Rose father's message, that Rose come to know that there is her father's message. She what the particular message she come to know after communicate with Mr. Relay. But while she goes Mr. Relay, and she met Mr. Relay on that incident, Peter saw her with him, and on that time what he saw that Rose and Mr. Relay just talking smoothly, but he better Peter take it a very exaggerated way, and he continuously beat him on that Mr. Relay come that situation that he is not capable to wake up, or very fearable atmosphere on that incident.
Yes. What is representing through this play?
So uh, please, please again say.
Yes. This play is which type representing?
Okay, this play is quite similar with Harold Pinter's second play, as we saw the birthday party. That this play, if I'm talking about, if I'm talk about through my topic comedy of Menace, that comedy is there, but the meanness is present, that something will be done by character in very tragic way, or in very fear in very fear atmosphere will be created by a character or events in that play. So this is one of the reason.
Is it visible? Now it is visible. Okay. So today's my topic is why nations choose war above the peace, and this is my personal information. And these 5 points I have to ponder in my presentation. So first, let me give the brief introduction that what is the war. So according to Oxford Dictionary, war is the state of armed conflict between different countries or different group within a country. And also the another definition is war is defined as the violent conflict between states or nations. Main reasons behind the war is economic, religious, political, and sometimes the ideological and psychological reasons are also there, that I have to discuss later slide. And these are some of the disasters of war, like economical fall, death of humanity, death of millions of life, and the other ones. One Arab proverb I have linked here, that is very much relatable with this disaster. Like war is disaster for winners and losers alike. So the reasons behind the war, first reason is the political reason. Mainly the international politics are the reason for the war. And sometimes, as we see that the for the purpose of revenge, revenge politics, the nations choose war. Like as we see that one nation do something wrong with this other nation economically, or the we don't know that what they do, but in the answer of them, they used to attack on the another nation, and the war is happened. So that is there. The another example is political structure, like at the one nation there are democracy, and the another nation there are monarchy, so the views are become different.
and the point of views, and that we can say that ideology are become different, so that also minorly sometimes cause the war. Then the another one is economical reason. Nations who have strong economical position try to suppress the other nations. That is become sometimes the reason of war, and sometimes the poverty of any nation becomes the reason of war. Like they don't have enough sources and enough necessary things to survive their nation, so they attack on the another nation, and the war becomes. And then the another one is imperialism is somewhere also become the reason of war. Like we can say like one kingdom used to attack on the another kingdom to show their power and to show their we can say that what they have, the power of them. The resources are taken from this article in this slide. Then the general ideology, as in here I have took two lines of the another various books. Like first is George Orwell's 1984. The line is war is peace, freedom is slavery, and ignorance is strength. And the another one is Gujarati line, like Mahakavi Nanalal's line, like Parthne kaho chadave baan, have to yuddh ej kalyan. So the lines are written by the writers which is belongs from the different nations, but the concept of the this both are the same. Like they are praising war, they are supporting war. So sometimes this thing, generally we see that war is not taking as as a positive way, but here it is taken as the positive way. So somewhere these are also become the reason that how the mindset of people are shaped according to in positive light towards war. That is there. Then the general ideology of political leaders, that how they are interpreting, how they are looking any particular condition. Like there are some conflict between two nations, then how they are dealing according to their ideology, that is also sometimes causing war. Like if they choose war, then that is this is war, and if they choose peace, then this is peace. Then the religion as a reason. Here I give one chart in which that is the numbers of numbers in which the religion become the reason of war. Then I also put one video of spread of religion. When we see that generally religion spread all over the world, that is not possible without the fight. If you have to spread your religion, then you have to fight with the another one. Another one, that is we find in general sense what is happening. Then if we see generally, then it is religion is taken as a power of peace. As we see message of shanti 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 in Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, and the laughing Buddha is also symbol of happiness and peace. In Jainism and Buddhi, Christianity also we find this kind of message of peace. But there are also many religions are there which is um, supporting the war. Like we can say Mahabharat is also example of that. The Sheikh concept is also there, that they are also supporting uh, the war. So, and as we see that sometimes religion is also become the reason behind the war. Then the next is psychological reason. This reference I have taken from War Encyclopedia. uh, as we see that we have the psychological trauma in our mind that this country is good, this country is not good. So somewhere that is provide that is become the reason when the nation is choosing this thinking about the war or to peace. And as we here we can take the example of India and Pakistan. If we are looking this both the nation, we are we have that side that if this is Pakistan, then we have the negative light, put negative light on that, and that Pakistanis have same thing that okay, this is the India, these people are that, these people are that. So this thing is also become sometimes the reason. This thing is also become the reason of that. Then the pressure of public crisis among the political parties and lack time of decision is also made them think different. Like this all this pressure is also sometimes um, force the political leader to choose the wrong path, or we can say the path of war. Then the writer, artist, and social media is also as taken as the reason of war. As we see the artist, an artist of the floating world, Kazuo Ishiguro, in that Masuji Ono made painting on nationalism, but later on he come to know that okay, this thing lead my country towards the downfall. So sometimes artists is all artist, or we can say writers were also become the reason of that. Then newspaper, news channels, and other social medias play a vital role in shaping the public opinion and vision, and that public opinion we can deflect uh, uh, is come out as the force of uh, force towards the political parties, that okay, we want, if you political parties are not want the war, but we want the war, that public opinion become major part, or overcome the decision sometimes. Then I have end my presentation with the question that why nation choose war above the peace. There it is on rely on the personal choice or situation and environment of any nation. So that is only based on the personal things, and I have put this all points, but instead of this all points there are also some many points are there. So I'm ending with this, and these are my citations, and thank you.
Yes, Himanshi. As you mentioned in your slide that the general ideology about war is always positive. Can you elaborate that? As we hear the word war, it seems always negative or create the black atmosphere in people's mind. That can we connect it with psychological reading?
Can you repeat your question? Sorry, I can't understand.
The general ideology about war is always positive. You mentioned in your slide
Yes.
that can you elaborate that? As we hear the word war, it seems always negative or create the black atmosphere, that fear, it create fear in people's mind first. It not it's perhaps it is not come with positive aspect, but first it's come with negative aspect, that people are people are creating yeah, like negative thinking. They create that. So can we connected it with psychological reading?
So yes, we can connect it with psychological reading. Like it is based on the one particular. If there are two persons, and the one person is want taking war as a positive way, so and one person is taking war in negative way, so the both the person's ideology were different. If there, that is might be their ideology shaped by the experience they get, or we can say their mindset, or their or we can say their environment around them. So it is always we can say that there is psychological perspective is there, like it is based on the each one's choice. We cannot define it like okay, this war is taken as the positive way only, or war is taken as a negative way only. There are the both the perspective are there.
Yeah, so my question is how the general ideology of this political leaders or the rulers can be changed from the youth age Kalyan to the Shanti age Kalyan.
You are asking
about in present time or in the general idea. Okay, how how the ideology of political leader or rules can be changed. Okay, so you are asking the reason that why it is change, or you are asking that how to change, how to change. Okay, so it is not there that we can say that the ideology is change or not. As I say to Divya, that it is on the particular choice. If they realize in the future, like okay, the one war is happened, then they get experience that these disasters are there, these things are there, these things are there. Then the next leader or next political leader are be aware that okay, this is happened in history, so we are not going to repeat it, so we have to change. But if that sense are not emerged, then that is no need, no chance to change.
Full screen. Now, full screen. Myself, Hirva Pandya, and today I am going to deal with fantasy literature. This is my personal information. Points to ponder. What is fantasy literature? Fantasy literature in 20th century. Characteristics of fantasy literature. 5 essential elements every fantasy novel need. Conclusion and citation. Definition of fantasy literature. Fantasy is meaning of fantasy literature is it is imaginative fiction depended for effect on strangeness of setting and of characters as a supernatural or unnatural beings in which the plot could not happen in real life. Often the plot involves magic or witchcraft and takes place on another planet or in another undiscovered dimension of this world. Fantasy literature of 20th century. Here I highlighted main points of fantasy literature of 20th century. In 20th century, after 1937, it started with J.R.R. Tolkien, and it is considered as golden age of fantasy genre. Occurred during the 1950s and 1960s, with Tolkien's addition along are considered more as C.S. Lewis' Chronicles of Narnia and Ursula K. Le Guin's Arthur. These titles help forge clear identity for fantasy genre and airy epics. During this time period, fantasy became more sophisticated and mostly affected by the developments of science and technology, such as quantum physics, new theories regarding origin of the universe and experiments with atomic energy. In the 20th century fantasy literature, there is supernatural proceeding, time shifts, and other worlds. In 1977, the fantasy novel finally hit the bestseller list with Terry Brooks' Sword of Shannara, Young Adult Sword and Sorcery, books such as those by Robert Jordan and David Eddings became very popular, and more recently, authors such as Diana Vinay Jones, Tomra Pierce, and J.K. Rowling are keeping the fantasy genre well. Characteristics of fantasy genre: good versus evil. This is the most primary factor of fantasy genre. The protagonist has both sides. One is a good and other side is evil side. We can take example of the novel Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. The person is only one in the novel, but he has both sides like good and evil. The fantasy novel, often set in a medieval universe or a laboratory, from Middle Earth to Narnia, Alagacia, Hogwarts, and even Fox, the setting another character in the story. It is the unique quality of landscapes that allows for the of the events in the story take place. Man versus society. In the fantasy novel, there is always a person is alone and society is against him. Example: Frankenstein uh, in this genre, monster is alone. In the whole story, and society is against him. Five essential need elements every fantasy novel need. First is magic system. A magic system refers to things occurs or exist in your story that do not or cannot exist in the supernatural, advanced abilities or power. Basically anything with no basis real world evidence or logic can be considered as magic. A well developing setting. This is another absolutely vital animal within fantasy fiction. When you are writing this genre, your story take place or author story take place completely in a new world. In order to immerse readers in your world, you must develop your setting thoroughly and thoughtfully. A cast of complex character, as with any novel, is often characters in fantasy fiction that truly get readers invested in the story. Your setting, plot, and magic system may intrigue you and engage readers, but none of these aspects matter if your readers don't care about the characters and their outcomes. Central conflict. This is the central key of every good fantasy novel or every good fantasy story. This is especially true in a fantasy fiction where the stakes are often higher. Your characters and story usually stretches across multiple books in a series. The Harry Potter series is the great example of conflict in fantasy fiction. While each book contains its own internal conflict, the series as a whole deals with one central conflict, that between the boy wizard and Harry, the evil Lord Voldemort. This conflict ties all seven volumes of the series together and keeps the story moving forward at all the times. Conclusion. As Pamela S. Gates stated, literary fantasy became a medium of sustain our need for heroes and perpetual belief that good can overcome evil, but without the level of moralizing found in earlier texts. This is my point of view. To sum up this, it is very rightly said by writer. This is not by the writer I mistaken, because fantasy add more capacity to build a beautiful and imaginative world. These are my citations. Thank you.
So, Hirva, my question is, as you said in your PPT that in fantasy literature, person always remain alone and society become against him. And you gave the example of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. So, for what reason Dr. Jekyll, the society become against the Dr. Jekyll? Do you know it?
Dr. Jekyll has both sides. Society only knows the good side of Mr. Jekyll, but when the society comes to know about the evil side, they left the Dr. Jekyll alone, and they are against society against Dr. Jekyll.
But he is not alone from the beginning. We can say that.
Yes, yes, he is not alone from the beginning, because he from beginning he only shown the society the good side, not evil side. Evil side is evil side is evil side. We can know about that evil side in the last part or last sequence of this novel.
Yes, Hirva, my question is why people are more interesting in 20th century to see fantasy movies rather than books.
Fantasy movie are above beyond our capacity, and people or a person is always tries to live in a fantasy world, and he likes the more fantasy world than the logic and reasoning world.
Good afternoon, everyone. My today's presentation from the paper A History of English Literature is about is a comparison between or a difference between the Victorianism and modernism. This is my information. These are the table of contents, introduction, societal difference, literary difference, and conclusion. Introduction. A Victorian period is considered to be the period in which the Queen Victoria ruled. Then modern period the is beginning of 20th century and the ending of 19th century. We have noticed and read We noticed that in the beginning of 20th century there was progress in technology, scientific revolution was going on, globalization was increasing, and it is considered to be an ever accelerating progress. In no such progress was noticed or recorded before this period. The modern period is having the ever accelerating progress along with the two major wars, which are World War One and World War Two. Into the glossary of literary terms, M.H. Abraham has recorded Victorianism is frequently used in a derogatory way to connote narrow-mindedness, sexual prejudice, the determination to maintain feminine innocence, that is, sexual ignorance, and the emphasis is on social respectability. Societal difference. The people of Victorian age were considered to be the gullible. They were people who could be easily controlled under. They used to come under the voice or control of authority and society dictates. They were easy to be binded in anything. They can be controlled through words. They were driven towards the activity what authority was thinking them to do. The major change we see from Victorian to the modern age is changes in thoughts and emotions. Young society looked at Victorian age as a dull, hypocritical, and thought them to be a superficial, stupid, and hideous. The post-Victorian period was considered to be submitted to the rules of expert. For them, the voice of authority was main, even if it is a religious place or a literature or in a family life also. Victorian society considered them to be a permanent. They thought that what is the situation in the world during the reign of Victoria is permanent. They are white people. They are made to rule the world by the God. They are selected by the God to rule the world, and this is the permanent. No change will come. This was the ideology of Victorian society. They built the house of unshakable foundations. But as the young age came, they started questioning their parents, their grandparents, started believing in the descent of man by Darwin instead of the religious book. The idea of permanence in the institution started breaking. They started moving out of houses. Even in the domestic place, the young children started moving out of home instead of staying in a societal structure of family with parents and with grandparents. They started moving out for studies, for their work, and even if we see in a international level, they were breaking the rules that they are only the one to rule. They were questioning their own family, their own authority, their own grandparents, and this. And also, the Bernard Shaw gave the watchwords to this creed, that is, question, examine, and test. All this came due to the growth of restless desire to probe and question. A huge Holman has said, modernism is a strong and conscious break with traditional forms and techniques of expression. Modern implies a historical discontinuity, a sense of alignment, of loss, and of despair. If not only rejects history, but also the society of whose fabrication history is a record. Now, looking at the literary difference, Victorian age and modern age, both the era have made an impact to take the people to make people look towards the literature in a different way. But still, there is very much difference in their themes, subject, purposes of writing, and techniques. In Victorian era, the literature was written about the upper social class, talking about the economy. Like we have seen in Oscar Wilde's The Importance of Being Earnest, upper class societies discussed more. Charles Dickens' Hard Times, the scenario of aristocratic upper class societies, we are seeing more. Even in the Thomas Hardy's Jude the Obscure, we see that how the upper class is ruling and lower class is not allowed. We see the class difference more. The themes in Victorian literature are majorly cultural identity, domesticity, imperialism, industrialization, class, science, progress, nostalgia, the women question, and utilitarianism. They were more embraced to the traditional life. We can see the traditional life they were following was which was we have read in Pride and Prejudice. The girls are meant to marry, men are meant to go out for earning. Such traditional values and forms were followed in Victorian era. While in the modern literature is showing the what actual world is looking, the reality of world is seen in the modern literature. It reflects the disillusionment, alignment, everything what which was faced or felt by the world during the time of World War. The themes are loss and despair, political destruction, individualism, experimentation, absurdity, symbolism, and formalism, which we have seen in the novels which we have discussed. That is The Great Gatsby, where we find that how individualism is seen in the character of Gatsby, for whom the bell tolls. We see the loss and despair, the war, the atmosphere around the war which is created, that waiting for the Godot. We find the theory of existentialism. They don't know what they want to do, absurdity in their life. In Kazuo Ishiguro's, the situation, what happens to the artist or the characters who were present at the wartime, and after wartime, what situation they had to face. In a conclusion, I would like to say that modernism is nothing but a reaction to Victorianism. Victorianism was very much repressing the society, repressing the younger generation with their ideals and practices, which started being questioned. And this, as the spring is pressed, and it then jumps. The same way happened in the modern age. The modern young people started questioning, and they came out. The Victorian age recedes in time. That is, the Victorian age comes and backthrow is happening in the Victorian age. If we see in the present time, the question arises in what age we are living, in a Victorian age or a modern age. Then at just in a mind, we can feel that the society is divided into two parts. A modern age, the people who are considered to be the business class people, or who are rich, they are living a modern life. They are having their individualistic lifestyle. Even in the domestic, in the family, children stay as they want. Family parents are as they want. They don't have any type of they are not asked to follow anything, that this is a society, you have to stay like this. And if we go in the middle class families or lower middle class families, they are asked, or they live in a societal structure of a family. Children are taught how to respect elders, which is the structure which we see majorly in a Victorian era than modern era. So we are in 22nd century, but we are not out. We are still living the Victorian age, which we feel, and the modern age is also present along with us. These are my readings which I have read. These are my works cited. Thank you.
So, Zil, my question is, as you said that Victorian people used to believe that they are existing to rule over other and they are the superior one. So, what are the major reasons behind this?
The major reason I feel that they are thinking them to be a permanent ruler is, if we read the history, and we have read that Britishers came colonized all over the world, and when those when the generation in the Victorian age came, they were already ruling. Their ancestors were who colonized. Their grandparents and parents colonized, and they started thinking that this is my place. I have been. Suppose we are living in a family, or it is a monarchy. Someone has fought against the king and set up himself as something, and when that person's child will come, he will start feeling that no, this is mine only. It was my father's. It is mine. He won't understand what happened to his father or the people who are under rule. He won't understand. He will start saying that this is mine, this is mine. I feel this thing happened with the people of Victorian society. That they started feeling that this is what with the birth they were having, the colonized society, they were ruling over the many parts in the world. So that is what I think they started feeling that this is a permanent thing going to be because we are with this and we have born with this.
Sir, can I ask? Is there any similarity between modernism and Victorianism?
Till what I have discussed and read, I don't find any major similarity because it is an, as we discussed, it was an ever accelerating progress. A drastic change came between both this period. And even if we read history as we are learning in that history or in a literature also, there is a drastic change in both the literature of both the eras. The Victorian was talking about their life, personal, and what was good in their society, while modernism was talking about what needs to be improved, what is bad in the society. So I don't find any major similarity, but we find a drastic change between them.
Hello everyone. Hello everyone. Myself Pandya Mayuri. Today I'm deal with surrealism, the modern movement, or we can say that artistic movement also. This is my personal information. Meaning of a surrealism, according to Cambridge meaning, a type of 20th century art literature in which unusual or impossible things are shown happening. A surrealism deal with a Sigmund Freud view about subconscious and how to their dream, like we can see that dream like a two, which they feel in his or her dream, they can portray it with painting or in a literature. Both things are there, and others art they can use in a surrealistic way. Surrealism movement in a visual art and literature flourished in a Europe between World War First and World War Second. Surrealism grew in a principally out of the earlier Dada movement, which before World War First produced work of anti-art that deliberately defined reason, but surrealism emphasized was not on a negotiation but on a positive expression. The movement is that show destruction wrought by rationalism and also European culture and politics in a past, and that the culminated and horror of a World War First. This is that long presentation, and because of that trouble of a time, I am just give you a brief information because I want to show you one video also. This is the characteristic of surrealism, dream like a scene and symbolic images, which we seen in a next slide also. The two type of surrealism, automaticism. In this type of the surrealism, any writer or painter should they write or paint which in their mind, or we can say that they never thought on that. In a surrealism, no logic, no reason. This is the automaticism, automatic their mind which thought they wrote or paint. In a veristic surrealism, in that These are two second type of surrealism. They are deeply interested in, or we can say that influence of a Sigmund Freud view of the subconscious. They are a dream or subconscious mind thought or write or paint on that. Major surrealistic artists, they are painters, not writers. This is the all painting by Salvador Dali, a major or a famous painter of that surrealism or a surrealistic movement.
Have you ever had a dream that felt real? Sigmund Freud, the founder of psychoanalysis, believed that dreams express the unconscious mind, while our waking perception express the conscious one. For the surrealists who loved Freud, that made dreams just one example of a higher reality, a deeper, more natural human experience. And by fusing dream and reality, surrealist writers
Stream here. Influence of surrealism in Indian art. These are surrealism movement in Europe, but they are some are highly influenced writer in India or a writer painter in India. They are highly influenced on the surrealism. They make some paintings with a unique way or influenced by a surrealism. Let's get see. The first three are a Ganesh fire painting. He was known as a dark surrealistic, and second three are the Sanakkar. He was also a painter in a surrealism influence painter. He also made a painting in a very unique way. Surrealism in a literature. Surrealism is a art movement which also in a art or a painting in a literature also. A literature produced in a above I mentioned that three type of surrealism, automaticism and veristic surrealism. A literature is on a both way, that automaticism in that surrealism, that writer produced their which we can say that spontaneous Wordsworth say that spontaneous, they wrote on that way, that first thought in their mind, and they wrote on that poetry or a novel or anything which he like it or her like it. And second of that surreal type, they are also wrote on that way also. The major writer in a surrealistic writer, they are a major writer. The Andrew Britton was a famous or a major writer in a surrealism. All are that famous, but he was that also famous, or we can say that sometimes he was a major part of that surrealistic movement. Those are my work citation. Thank you.
Yes, questions.
Okay, Mayuri, if you are Mayuri, my question is, if you are asked to define surrealism in the simple words, how would you define it?
Okay. Yes, in a simple way, which I can uh, define in a simple way. Surrealism is which we feel, which we thought in our mind, which write or paint on that, or also say that the modern art, which we feel, there we write, not a traditional way.
So, one more further in that, then if it is what we think and we write, then why it is surreal? Real is in that it can be divided into two parts, sur and real. Then why that word has real in there?
uh, our my friends also that presentation on fantasy, right? Fantasy and surrealism both are different. I am give your answer on that. Surrealism was a dream plus real, not only dream, not only fantasy, not only reality. They are mixed up, dream and reality, and that why their name was a surreal.
So, Mayuri, my question is how the idea of unconscious mind and surrealism are connected.
Okay. Surrealism and unconscious mind are connected because our some thought we cannot speak on others, or not we can see, or we can define it. In one painting by a Salvador Dali, in his painting, he paint many of watches, watch in trees, in mountains, or this is that unconscious thought, which produced by Sigmund Freud. This is the connection. The thought which we feel, we write, or we paint.
Now it is visible. Visible.
It's visible. So, good afternoon, everyone. Today is the last day of our presentation. I am Nidhi. Today's my topic is theater of the absurd. This is my personal information. First of all, about the introduction. The theater of the absurd is a term connected by the critic Martin Esling for the work of the number of playwrights, mostly written in the 1950 and 1960. The term is derived from an essay by the French philosopher Albert Camus his work Myth of the Sisyphus, written in 1942, in first defined the human situation as the basically meaningless and absurd. The origin of the theater of the absurd are rooted in the avant-garde experiment of the 1920 to 1930s. At the same time, it was undoubtedly strongly influenced by the tournament experience of the horrors of the Second World War. Their work simply expressed the thought of human existence, of the meaning or purpose. Definition and meaning of the absurd theater. According to Merriam-Webster dictionary, defined as the term as the theater that seeks the repression of the absurdity of human existence in a meaningless universe by breeze or fantasy means. The second definition, cut off from his religious, metaphysical, and transcendental roots, man is Lord's all his action become senseless, absurd, and useless. Meaning of the absurd. The word absurd means foolishness, senseless, opposed to reason, something silly and ridiculous. The state of condition in which human being exists in the
irritational and meaningless universe in which human life has no ultimate meaning. Theater of the absurd is otherwise referred to as absurdism, absurd originally out of harmony. Its meaning is the theater of the absurd is different to the every meaning of the word as ridiculous plot and the structure. The anti-realistic going against many of the accepted rooms in conventional theatre elaborate the sub-critique as the anti-theatre, often the characterized by a deliberate absence of the cause, effect and relationship between scenes, non-linear plot development, occasionally appearing as the thought there is a plot at all speak of, and the deliberate lack of conflict. The last, a play which nothing happens that it keeps audience glad of their seats. What more, since the second act is a stably different reprise of the first, he has written in the play which nothing happens twice absurd play. What is about play? The first large major production of an absurdist play is Jean Genet, the Maids in 1947. The Lonesco, the Blood Sporana was performed in 1950, and the Samuel Beckett, Waiting for Godot, is the probably is the best known of the absurdist play, and Waiting for Godot are published in 1953. Waiting for Godot is the most conventional absurdist play example of the absurd play. Some are famous absurd play that Waiting for Godot by Samuel Beckett, Jane Janet, The Balcony, Harold Pinter, The Dumb Waiter and the Birthday Party, Eugene Lonesco, The Bald Sparrow and the other play acting and characterization. The play, the absurd theater, both presentational and representation modes of action, sometimes stereotypical, often an absence of character development, absurd character, lack of his motivation found in character of realistic dramas highlight their purposeness, time, place, and identity are frequent blurred with character, often universe about who and they are. Characters often are harmony, our style of the word in which they are live dialogue, which kind of dialogue they are used. The language developed is the communication tools, often illogical, sometimes telegraph and clipped, long pauses, cliches, repetition, rhythmically frequent of use and silence and monotone in slow dialogue. The main characteristic of absurd theater, the first question to the existence. Absurd play arise some basic question of existence like why we are alive, why we have to die, why there are injustice of the suffering. The second, distance in language. For absurdist playwright, language is only a meaningless communication in stereotypical excess of the idea because word fail to express an essence of human existence. Third, the re-establishment of the main communication with universe. They are attempt to restore the importance of myth and ritual in their life, of men make them aware of ultimate realistic of their life. The illogical speeches and meaningless prose are the absurd playwright used his play in meaningless plot. By illogical speeches and meaningless plot, they wish to establish the feeling of freedom to make their own word. According to Pulitzer, the rationalist thought like language only deal with the superficial aspect of things. Nuances, on the other hand, open up glimpse of the influence the emphasis of absurd value of life. Absurd is forced to take our abstract value of life, like love and family, those we may have hope, accept to the absurdity of life, and try to find value in word devoid of them. Last, the voiceless about the life, place, and character. Absurdists have no time, and no place and character, and they play. They are feel that there is no past or not future. Only the repetition of his parents, lack of communication, and a main character. Each character live in egoist life and attempt to get another character to understand him. This result of more alienation. Conclusion. Thus, the absurd theater is not a positive play, as it is never tries to prove that men can still live in the fertilite world. It only demonstrates the absurdity and illogically of the world which we have, but does not provide any solution of the problem. By this play, man is again reminded that his existence is the world is in fact absurd and meaningless.
Nidhi, what was the first absurd play?
This is the Ishik something like that.
Can absurd play be considered a satire of society?
Yes, because the absurd play. Sorry, please repeat your question.
Can an absurd play can be called a satire of society?
No, because absurd play is fully of absurd means meaningless play, and satire is a way of good. So I am not convinced that the absurd play is a satire.
List close to the then I'm unmuted. So, it is the fifth as well as the last day of my presentation. And from the history of the last paper, I have chosen the topic major artistic and literary movements of the 20th century. So let us move ahead. Here is my personal information. And so it is the introduction that I have. See, it is the 20th century opened new vistas and possibilities that expanded everyday human experiences and greatly influenced the world of art and original painting. From the earliest years of the turn of the century, artists were beginning to experiment with subject matter, creating realities reflecting more of their own inner vision than what lay before them in nature. So it says clearly that they did not follow the predecessors, or they wanted to create something new in that. So let us move ahead so we can get this kind of background of this new artists were inspired by their own self. They didn't want to follow their predecessors. These are overlapping here, but okay, that's fine. So the very first movement is the stream of consciousness. So this Virginia Woolf, a British writer, is considered very prominent writer in the field of stream of consciousness, and she is recognized a feminist writer and perhaps one of the most important writer in general of all time. Virginia Woolf used the stream of consciousness technique to great significance in her work. The novel Mrs. Dalloway follows the thoughts, experiences, and memories of several characters on a single day in London. In this passage, the title character Clarissa Dalloway watches cars driving by. So there is a dialogue that this character thinks in a kind of stream of consciousness. So by the way, this the word is was coined by William James, an American philosopher, in his book The Principles of Psychology in 1950. So it is the background, and the Virginia Woolf is the prominent writer, and another comes the Samuel Beckett. He is an absurdist as well. Used the stream of consciousness techniques in three novels. So first he published a trilogy of a novel, so in which he included this Molly, Melanie, Dice, and the Unnameable. To deliver a stream of observation and musings on time and existence, Beckett placed stream of consciousness style monologues in the mouths of many of his characters and later applied the methods. So these three are very prominent authors in this discipline, the stream of consciousness. And the third one is James Joyce, who is very much famous for his Ulysses. Ulysses is written in the golden year of literature, which is 1922. This novel tracks a single day in life of Irishman Leopold Bloom. It contains long, lengthy passages of stream of consciousness. So it is there. So these three are prominent writers in the field of stream consciousness. We are moving ahead. Second one is expressionism. So basically, what expressionism is that whatever the writer, whatever the painters, rather, it is a movement more related to painting than the poetry or literature. So whatever this painter felt within themselves, they just didn't care about the rules and regulations. They just expressed in the way they felt. So now the very first is Edvard Munch. So Edvard Munch's own deeply original style. So his own style. So once again we come to know he's not following anybody. So his own style, own deeply original style, crystallized about 1892. Munch used line not as decoration but as a vehicle for profound psychological revelation. So as I told you that whatever they felt within themselves, they just expressed in a same way. So psychological revelation. So whose psychology? Basically the psychology of the painter or an author or a poet, rather. The violent emotion and unconventional imagery of his paintings, especially, so it is the characteristics of his paintings that this violent emotion. So violent emotion is the painting of the scream. So the scream here is shown. This violation is shown then, and especially their daringly frank representation of sexuality created a bitter controversy. So he, if you go through his painting, then you will find some nude pictures, especially of ladies as well. So he was a kind of free person in that way. But and another is this is Kate Kollwitz. She is was the last great practitioner of German expressionism. So basically, expressionism began in the Germany, rather, and is often considered to be the foremost artist of social protest in 20th century. Her expressionistic prints, woodcuts, and sculptures empathetically portrayed human suffering, capturing the anguish and plight of the impoverished and injured in a country torn apart by armed conflict. So basically, her art was focused on the war and the aftermath of the war. So here you will find this painting. People are just hanging by this row and this laces, or it is a boundary for the country, and these people are very impoverished. They don't get food and time. And the third one is this Max Pitzstein. Max Pichstein, a painter and printmaker, who was a leading member of the group of German expressionist artists known as Die Brücke. Well, it is in English translated as the bridge. So it was the bridge, and he was the member of a prominent member of this group, and he is best known for his paintings of nudes and landscapes. So here you will find this primitive. He was interested in primitive life or the tribal life of the people, and the way he painted everything was reflected in his painting. So here you will find a lady without clothes is there, and a man is sitting there. So it is Indian painting. So he named it is a Indian painting. So if you go through that, you will get there. And now the third one is this absurdism. So absurdism, by and large, talked about perhaps the last presenter there. So okay, so Eugene Ionesco, Romanian-born French dramatist whose tragicomic farces, and here are some okay of bourgeois life. So he wrote about the bourgeois life, the very aristocratic life he depicted in his writings, and the meaninglessness of social conventions. So, as a modernist character, they flouted the Victorian rule of believing in their predecessor and their conventional beliefs or customary belief system. So, he flouted this meaninglessness of social convention and the futile, and rather he supported and he flouted the beliefs of this previous era. And now the meaningless, his paintings or the writings are focused on mainly in the meaninglessness of social conventions and the futile and mechanical nature of modern civilization. So why it was futile? As we have this Albert Camus, the myth of Sisyphus. So it is shown in this that it was the futile and mechanical condition. Then you have to wake up on this particular time. Then you will have to go to bed this particular time. So there was no freedom, a personal freedom, and his plays built on bizarrely illogical or fantastic situation using such devices as the humorous multiplication of objects on stage until they overwhelm the actors. So it is about his style of writing the plays. And second one is the very famous or the consider the father of this who is also considered as the father of this absurdism, Albert Camus, in his influential philosophical essay Limit de Sisyphe, or in English the myth of Sisyphus, in which he with considerably sympathy analyzed contemporary nihilism and a sense of the absurd. So nihilism, how he considered nihilism, and everything he described in his play, rather essay, his writings, which addressed themselves mainly to the isolation of a man in an alien universe. So we come to know about this Fyodor Dostoevsky, Crime and Punishment, he wrote. So there is an alienation is shown by the rather represented by the character of Raskolnikov. So he was also an absurdist, and here the Albert Camus is doing the same in his writings. The estrangement of individual from himself, and the problem of evil and the press. So the problem of evil. So suppose people become aware that there is no God, they realize, then there is a chance to there is a chance for them to become evil. That they will get to know that there is nothing who can govern us, and so that let us do whatever the way we want to do. So it is the problem of evil, and the pressing finality of death accurately reflected the alienation and disillusionment for post-war intellectual. So after war, so after especially the Second World War, there was a kind of, you can say, a tediousness between people, that they didn't want to talk to each other. They just wanted to sit in a lonely place, and it was like that. So he depicted this alienation from people to people. And third one is Franz Kafka. We all are aware of this famous philosopher, that Franz Kafka's stories and novels have provoked a wealth of interpretation. So it is not so that anyone metamorphosis there. And this trial is there. If you read them, then you will find, okay, there are many layers of interpretation open for the readers or the critics to define accordingly. So Franz Kafka's stories and novels has provoked a wealth of interpretations. Well, Brood and Kafka's first English translators, Edwin Muir and his wife, Villa, viewed that the novels as allegories of divine grace. So these two people, Edwin Muir and his wife Villa, viewed his Franz Kafka's novel as allegories of divine grace. So they perhaps might have believed that, okay, this whatever Franz Kafka is writing, it is coming from the divine intuition. And existentialists have seen Kafka's environment of guilt and despair as the ground upon which to construct an authentic existence. Some have found an imaginative anticipation of totalitarianism in the random and the faceless bureaucratic terror of the trial. So the trial is a work by him. So here you will find a person without any reason, or rather without being told that offense, that he caught up by the police, and he is never get released, and he dies at the last. So it was about absurdism. So it depicted the absurdity of life. So how life is absurd. There is no God. If there is no God, then how will you find the things? So it is there. And how will you arrange your life accordingly? And now the fourth one is so the name got evaporated. Okay, so it is surrealism. Surrealism was also good, very well uh, uh, movement, and it was also dealt with by Mayuri. So, an original member of the Data group, Andre Breton, founded and led the surrealist movement. So, he belonged to both the groups, the Dadaism that we will discuss in the further slides, and another is surrealistic movement in 1924. Introducing the notion of intuitive art. So, intuitive art or individualism in it is at the base of this modernist culture. And automatism is also dealt with very well by Mayuri. That automatism is whatever you are having within yourself, you will just automatically pour out in the paper or on the canvas while you are painting and writing the poetry. In his surrealistic manifesto, so he wrote a work, Surrealistic Manifesto. He defined the movement as psychic automatism in its pure state. So there is no kind of distortion while thinking or while writing what you are felt, what you have felt. So it is the pure real. So what is there will be depicted through as it is, which one proposes to express verbally by means of the written word or in any other manner. So verbally means to giving speech, and by the means of word means to giving providing through the writing. The actual function of thought. Uh, Britain believed in the future resolution of dream and reality into surreality. So the reality of he regarded as absolute. So basically, what surrealism is, that surrealism is this combination of imagination plus reality, as it was dealt with the unconscious plus conscious. So, and the second famous author or a painter is that celebrated Belgian surrealism painter Jean Magritte. Created works that are beautiful in their clarity and simplicity. So he focused only the beautiful aesthetic aspect of this world, or the beauty and the simplicity, but also provoke unsettling thoughts. So it is not so that he only provided this kind of simple things, but he also provided something that could provoke thoughts, unsettling thoughts, that they will startle you, that startle you to think the things. He described his work as, so he himself describes his work as the visible images that conceal nothing. So there is nothing behind it. There is nothing to read between the lines. So he's whatever was there, he puts as it is in simple manner. So as we saw that conceal nothing, but evoke mystery. So there is something mysterious, as we know that. Okay, so suppose somebody tells, okay, so who you are, and we just tell them, okay, we are just this, but why you are just this? Then the question becomes mysterious. Okay. Now, suppose like this absolutist tell that, okay, there is, or rather existentialist, rather this Friedrich Nietzsche is there, and Soren, they will tell, okay, if there is no God, okay, there is no God, we just believe that. But who this? What is the force behind this reason that suppose making you the thinking the things, right? So, what is the thing behind this creation? Yet we are not aware of that, and the concept of God comes when we do not know anything. So we want to fill this gap because we are afraid of this gap. So we put God in the place because we do not know the real thing, what is there, and we even, so it is the spirituality. If you strive to find the thing, so it is the spirituality, right? So now it was the another topic though. Now the third one is Salvador Dali. So it is very famous, Salvador Dali, and renowned for his flamboyant personality. He was a flamboyant. That he wanted to do whatever the whatever the society told him not to do. So he was a flamboyant, and you just go through his picture will tell you much of his personality, and his photos rather, as well as the painting made by him. A technical virtuosity. Salvador Dali is best known for his passion, painterly output, despite being formally expelled from the Surrealist group in 1934 for his reactionary political views. He is today most often associated with this movement, basing his surrealism artworks on Freudian theory. So his artistic or his artworks were concerned with this Freudian theory. Sigmund Freud provided the theory. Dali aimed to create a formal and visual language in his studio that could render his dreams and hallucination. So yeah, the dream and hallucination both are there in his painting as well as the act of tapping into the unconscious. He described as critical paranoia, obsessed with themes of eroticism, that the paintings that arouse the erotic feelings or Satanalian kind of things, death and decay. He is famous for employing ready interpreted symbolism encompassing fetishes, animal imagery, and religious symbol in his art. So it was about this surrealistic movement. And the last one is, or the fifth one is Dadaism. So Dadaism was, there was no a kind of a certain history that how the word came into existence, but some people are guessing it is the name of the boy and it was just like its characteristic. There is no meaning at all. So the founder is the Hugo Boll. Hugo Boll's major contribution as leader and co-founder, along with his girlfriend, cabaret performer Emmy. So cabaret is a kind of an, performing art. Emmy Hennings of the Dada movement was to articulate the collective's radical nihilistic and iconoclastic ideology. So basically, what was there in the base of this Dadaism movement? So there was nihilism first and iconoclastic ideology. So Boll's sound poems such as Caravane and Katzen and Perform exemplified Dada's ironic, nonsensical, and playful. So these are the characteristics of Dadaism. That they are ironic, they are satirical in nature, and they are nonsensical. So if you there is no linear thing. So there are all the things are splattered around and playful yet deadly serious critic of Western culture. So he was a Western culture critic. And now the second name is very famous, the Tristan Zara. Yeah, it is Tristan Zara, not Tristan Zara. Tristan Zara, a Romanian-born French poet and essayist known mainly as is the founder of that. So along with this Hugo Boll, he founded this movement, a nihilistic revolutionary. So nihilism will always be there when the term comes of Dadaism. Revolutionary movement in the arts, the purpose of which was the demolition of all the values of modern civilization. So here again, you will find the characteristic of the demolition of the this aroused by this modern value as well. He wrote the first data text. So first we find okay, see, the modernist authors or the painters were demolishing the values of their predecessors, that Victorians. But now why he is demolishing his own age's values, that modern civilization, right? So he was against as well as this. He wrote the first data text, La Premiere Avanta Celeste, the Monza Anipete. So it is translated as the first heavenly adventure of Mr. Antipyrine, and so here are some works of him. So Tristan Zara, and third one we all are aware of, that is the Marcel Duchamp, a French artist who broke down the boundaries between work of art and everyday objects. So generally you will find no, but here it becomes some kind of problematic thing that this art in the everyday life is also connected. Though, but here it's the objects. See the urinal titled Fountain he sent to the first exhibition of the Society of Independent Artists in 1970. Although he was a founder member of this society, he had signed the work Armor. So he coined a kind of sham, or you can say a false term, to hide his identity, that who has created this kind of artwork. So he, instead of putting his own name, on real name, he put this artwork, and theater. Therefore, it was refused. In Paris in 1919, he stayed with Picabia and established contact with the first data group. This was the occasion of his most famous ready-made, a photograph of the Mona Lisa with the mustache. So it is quite interesting thing. So Mona Lisa was painted by the Da Vinci, ancient painter, and as well as this anatomist. But here what did they do? This group, Dada group, that they painted mustache and the kind of a beard kind of thing in on the painting of Mona Lisa. So I hope you all are aware of this Mona Lisa painting, right? Yeah. So it is there, and that Dada is the scorn for the art of the past, which in their eyes was part of the infamy of a civilization that had produced the horrors of the war just ended. So why? What was the reason behind this? They are doing like this. They were flaunting their values of the past, because they thought that yeah, this infamy of a civilization that had produced the horrors of the war just ended. So just because of their ideology in the past, the war was there. That is why they were breaking the rules. Okay, so some problem occurred here. So after the conclusion was there, and after that references were there, that is fine. So I will conclude that okay, all these movements were they were not inspired like the others we saw. They were genuine movements. They were emerged out of the individual thoughts rather than the collective thoughts uh, in particular, we can say. So it was all about this five. There are many like avant-garde movement is there, and this. So there are many movements. These five are very much a major movement. So it was my presentation today, and thank you so much. Hold on.
So my question is, what does streams of consciousness means in psychology?
Yes, so a stream of consciousness. So let us go to the word first. So stream means a kind of water that flowing. In other simple words, stream of consciousness. So we are conscious, right? We are not staying at the same place, or our thoughts are not staying at the same place. So it is that is why our thoughts are changing by moment, not by second, but the very minute moments. So that is why it is called stream of consciousness. So our thoughts and our experiences are moving in a way, in a flow. So that is why, and they, as well as depicted in the novels by Virginia Woolf, that you will find there is no linearity in the dialogues. Whatever suppose she is talking about this cat, now she in Mrs. Dalloway, she jumps about out of the window and she talks about the pollution around. So it is there, the stream that flows, right? Satisfied or something else. Thank you.
Nirav, in your PPT, there are many movements. According to you, which movement are very important for art and literature?
So, so I think by and large, every moment that we discussed rather, right. So everything is very important for the art, but rather this surrealism very much important. I consider, uh, or rather expressionism more than surrealism. I consider this expressionism because it depicts the reality as it is. There is no distortion, no any kind of you can say promiscuity, changes made in the describing the things or the experience that are felt by the author. Okay, so somebody else. Okay, thank you.
Okay, so this is the last one for the day. Okay. Slightly put the camera down. I have asked one poll question, so give your response there, and one more will come. Okay. So one more response will come after this presentation has started.
Good evening, everyone. Today is the last day of our presentation, and I am going to present fantasy and religion in 20th century. Fantasy in literature. Elements of supernatural and fantastic world were an element of literature from its beginning. Through the idea of distinct genre in the modern sense is less than 2 centuries old. Historically, most works of fantasy were written. However, since the 1960s, is a growing segment of the fantasy genre has taken from the in the form of films, television programs, graphic novels, video games, music, and art. Stories involving magic and terrible monsters have existed in spoken forms before the advent of printed literature. Classical mythology is repeated with fantastical stories and characters, the best known and perhaps the most relevant to modern fantasy being the works of Homer and Virgil. So, the we can say the rise of fantasy literature was from 1960s, and before that there were J.K. Rowling's books were fantasy books were published in 1937 and 1915. The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings came, but in 1916s Stanley, very famous comic writer, came, and he created the most fantastic stories. And by the time he developed those stories to movies and TV programs, books, and much more. And also I want to say that there is a fantasy literature in Indian stories too, right from the ancient time. And we find that Panchatantra, the tales of animals, are the most famous and old version of fantasy literature. Also Vikram Betal and Vedas written by Ved Vyas has stories which fantasize us. Fantasy in 20th century literature. An important factor in development of the fantasy genre was the arrival of magazines devoted to fantasy fiction. In first genre was written in books which don't gives us that much interest, because most of people's don't read that much. But by the time the movies and stories came into video graphics, so that was the rise of fantasy literature. There was a publication of German magazine, and which reigned from 1990 to 1921. In 1923, the first English language fantasy fiction magazine came. Weird Tales was created. Many other similar magazines eventually followed the magazine of fantasy and science fiction. The pulp magazine format was the height of its popularity at this time and was instrumental in beginning fantasy fiction to a wide audience in the US. Best contribution towards fantasy is, as one of our presentation we saw that the Hobbits, the Lord of the Rings were good contribution towards this fantasy literature. But also the Harry Potter by Rowling is also a good contribution. Now Stanley is a comic writer. So of course we all know that the greatest Marvel series, the superhero series, which has Spider-Man, Batman, X-Men, Iron Man, Thor, and many more, which connects us with a memory that what will be the next. So these are the characters pioneered by Stanley and other his co-writers. And in the 1960s, this was a very less following. It was started from, I think, the first movie. I believe that first movie was the 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 Fantastic Four was the first movie. And by the time the series followed by the Fantastic Fours, the X-Men series, the Captain America, Doctor Strange movies, Spider-Man's, and so many there. Marvel Stories was started in 1939 by Martin Goodman as Timely Comics. By 1951, he generally became known as At Last Comics. The Marvel era began in 1961, the year that the company launched the Fantastic Four and other superhero titles created by Stanley, Jack, Steve, and many others writers. The Marvel brand, which had been used over the years, was solidified as the company's primary brand. And I have took a movie from Marvels, and that is the series of X-Men. And from that series, I have took a movie, X-Men Apocalypse, which was released in 2016. And what is the background of that movie? In Marvel's universe, mutants are humans who are born with a genetic trait called the X gene, which grants them natural superhuman abilities. Due to their differences from the majority of humanity, mutants are subject to prejudice and discrimination. That many X-Men stories feature social commentary on bigotry and justice. The X-Men have fought against a variety of enemies, including villainous mutants, human bigots, mystical threats, and malevolent artificial intelligences. In most interactions of the team, they are led by their founder, Charles, Professor X. Professor Charles, a powerful telepath who runs a school for mutant children out of his mansion. There are students who who live in his own mansion. Uh, Their stories have frequently involved a Magneto, a powerful mutant with a control over magnetic fields, who is depicted as an old friend of Xavier. As it goes about setting current and Egypt, a future X-Men up to battle against Apocalypse, who has risen from 4th century into 1983. So the movie starts. This is the two pictures. The opening scenes where there is a man in Egypt. In Egypt, this man is. There are several people who are doing an in a process to create an villainous mutant who can destroy everything. And if you go and watch that movie, you find that they are s- they are many they are so many that they are so strong that they can destroy everything. Like if you are standing, they can turn you into the walls and water and many things. So the idea of the movie is, there is a action, science fiction, fantasy. Also, there are a few comic scenes, but it is all about how to save world. And one of our villainous mutant belongs to the Egyptian group, which is very much. There is less literature from Egypt, and we found that the combination of science fiction and fantasy in the very opening scene. So this is one of the movie based on fantasies. Also, immortal powers are there, uh, and there are character like Kurtz and Scots who creates funny scenes in between. And there is a, I think, in a fantasy there is a less connection with God. And this is the comparison of movie genre in India. We mostly don't see that much of fantasy science fiction in compared to US and Canada. So we are 79% we are following comedy and less action, less thriller. And in US there is a uh, first the first row shown is about fantasy, then action, then drama. So we can compare that India is very slow in coming in the line, that we are very in very small thinking, like people are following just comedy rather than following thrillers and science fiction. These are my citations.
Who is asking? Nidhi.
So my question is, why is fantasy important in literature?
There is so many genre in literature, like comedy. There are several comedies, dramas, history. But we have we have just 2 century of history of fantasy. So by the time we have to turn to fantasy, like watching those kind of movie. Also, there is fantasy in ancient time, in Homer's Iliad, at the Trojan War, the Agamemnon. That was fantasy is much more giving us kind of a thing to watch, as a excitement, as a suspense, that what is going to happen. Like in all the Marvel movies, so you find that whenever any movie ends, it gives the uh, little little much trailer of each movies in previous movies. So fantasy is important.
Okay, so Vachchalata, my question to you is that what, according to you, could be the drawbacks of fantastical elements and their involvement in the movie? So, do you find any drawbacks that these kind of elements are involved in these movies, on the society or in the movie as well? Thank you.
No, actually, fantasy is what? Fantasy is there are every there are so many literature in fantasy also, right? So those are in Panchatantra. We find that that animal stories gives us that idea to how everyone sees that Panchatantra stories, right? So from our childhood we learn something from that Panchatantra. So that is fantasy and events are connected into society also.
Final poll is given there. So, quick response to the poll you can give. Okay. Okay, so by and large, content-wise, quite good. Presented also very well. Citations are improving. Quality citations are coming now in many of your resources. Uh, so when we move one step further, we come to a point in research writing that what we are mentioning should be cited, and whatever is cited should be mentioned. That connection becomes necessary in many of your presentations. I have seen today that in a way everything is okay, but whatever is mentioned is not cited, or whatever is cited is not very clearly mentioned. So that was the one higher level of academic writing, which we hope now in next semester you will be practicing and mastering also. But good to see in both the batches, morning as well as this, that most of you have reached at this level, and that also is a good achievement to reach at this level. Bhavna presented well. Okay. A few things which you need to work. We hope you will work in this semester, and at the end of the semester, things will improve also. Okay. Try to speak louder, as if there are so many people in the class. That is very necessary condition for public speaking. You should have a very loud tone. Voice should be very loud. Dhvani also presented well with various artistic movements, and there was this reference also to this Pragatishil artist, Pragatishil progressive artist, progressive writers. There was a very interesting group of people writing. They were known as Anjuman Tarakki Pasand. This all were Tarakki Pasand, progressive writers. They are known as Tarakki Pasand, Urdu writers, artists, uh, normal Hindi writers. There were very interesting groups there. Okay, there also we have seen that the way gesture article is cited, in the same way these paintings also can be cited. Like who is the painter, and then from which site or online gallery those things are taken. So that can be referred. Okay. Divya also presented well. Questions, Bhavna has asked a question, but it was not a proper question. So you need to frame the question properly. What is representing in that, so like what is represented, but still very clear, all art represents something. So why are you asking that question? What do you want to know that you are asking? That is how you have to make your question more clear. Himanshi also well prepared, good reference to that poetry, Kavi Nanalal's poetry, about youth age Kalyan, kind of a reference. So going to the right source was in there. In your presentation also, it is seen that you mentioned all so many things but not cited, like Nanalal. So it should be cited from where you are taking and when was he writing, which kind of poetic publication was he doing. So he was maybe around Victorian time. He was son of Dalpat Ram. Dalpat Ram was contemporary of Narmad. So early part of Victorian and then the later part of Victorian. During that time, they are writing. So it is British Raj. So to whom is he telling? Yudhej Kalyan. So that reference can be very interesting to be seen also. Orwell you referred, but it is not cited. Nicholas was referred, but that was not cited. Okay? Now, Ishiguro also you referred. So many references were there, but citation, it was not there. Hirva also presented well. Good question by Himanshi was asked to her also. Divya also asked a good question to her. Okay? So in that we see good quality questions were asked here. Also the question Divya asked, this why people go towards fantasy films rather than fantasy literature also. So that also is very interesting to see. You can ask, see in either way. Fantasy literature normally considered as young adult literature, children's literature to young adults in that category. But they are becoming bestseller also. They are best-selling books. So it means people are reading, though not as compared to the cinema goers, but it is not that they are not reading. So the last success story was with J.K. Rowling. Harry Potter also is a fantasy films, young adult, from children to young adult. It is growing, but they were best-selling books. So if the book was supposed to be released on the next day, early in the morning at 5 o'clock, people would stand in the queue to see that the shop opens and they are the first to pick up the book. So that craze was also there. So people are there. But again, this can be seen very interestingly. Jheel also presented well the difference between Victorianism and modernism. Several the book covers were also used in the slide. You also referred to show, then show should be cited. Though it is coming from S.E. Ward, then all cited by S.E. Ward. Bernard Shaw says this, that should be the sentence structure when it is cited. Mayuri also presented well, good content and other things were there in that. And Nidhi also presented well. Don't cite brainy quotes and those kind of websites. Quoting this, there are so many websites where there are quotes given, but they are not reliable. It is better to go to the original text rather than citing from the quotation websites. That is good for good morning, good night, WhatsApp messages, not for academic writing. It is good for WhatsApp messages, good morning, good night, but academic writing, it is not good. Okay, fine. So with this, we end our this season of presentation. You're also, let me see. I missed that name. Yeah. Okay. What was who's after Nidhi also? Vachchalata also. Yes, both. Yes, Nirav also well detailed, very well presented. All the things were given quite well about the movements, images, and the text. But you can make more slides instead of putting all the stuff on one slide. Make more slides. So the fonts are bigger, and the things can be very, because I don't know, people watching your video on a mobile phone will be able to read anything or not. You have to see from that angle. Then most of the students and the visitors will be on mobile phone. So on a smaller phone, we tell them to rotate, but people are not even rotating also. That also people don't do. Forget about the larger screen. But they will not even rotate to see something in deep. So that you have to keep in mind, that your videos are to be seen over YouTube. Then how will they able to read that font? So that is something that we can keep in mind. What should be the ideal font size? Something that is readable on mobile phone. That is the ideal size. let there be more slides. Number of slides increases is not a worry. You can quickly move on to all those slides. So don't stuff your slides and make it text heavy. Don't make it. That was the thing. Otherwise, it was good. Vachchalata also prepared very well on fantasy and religion of 20th century literature. Even those images, necessary images, were also given to prove the point, and some recent examples were also given from films also. Okay, so with this we end the things, and now wish you all the best for your exams. From Monday, your exams and your assignment dates are also coming near, so that we will see. We'll send some instructions regarding all those things also in the WhatsApp message, which you can follow. Okay? So we end our this season